So Amber Heard has been doing the interview circuit trying to clean up her case from the recently concluded trial she had with her ex-husband Johnny Depp. I haven't seen any of these interviews. I did watch a lot of the trial. It was just a hot mess. So in case you didn't know, I don't know how you wouldn't, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp just concluded their how can I say, circus, suck the defamation. It was a defamation trial. He had sued her for defaming him in an article that she wrote for the Washington Post, basically claiming that she was a victim of DV, because we gotta keep it clean in these YouTube streets, and that he did certain things that were questionable to her. And the jury wasn't buying it. The jury was like, nope, no ma'am, you's a liar.
You're a liar and you're a cheat.
And like, it was just crazy. Like, if you saw the trial, I at first wasn't really like following it, like, because I heard from years and years, it took like 6 or 7 years, that they had a trial in the UK and that he lost or whatever, and it was a whole big thing. So I really wasn't following up on it at first, but then I started seeing little clips pop up, and I was like, what's going on? So I said, let me just start watching it. Oh, child. It was crazy. From the witnesses, you had Dr. Spiegel and his maniacisms. So usually in these types of trials, you have the so-called victim and the heir. And, the preponderance of evidence was on him, actually, to prove that he didn't do what she claimed he did. So for an entire jury to come out and say, yeah, we wasn't buying a chick. And to give her lawyers credit, I'm sure they had no idea it was going to turn out to be, the circus that it was. That, it just became more evident as the trial went on that they were just losing control. And to top it off, to put her on the stand. Okay, her testimony, like, I'm not going to say, like, it had anything to do. Yes, she does have some psychological issues going on. She does have, things happening within her that can sort of affect her grasp of reality. But at some point, her counsel should have just been like, chick, like, you're not believable. Like, you're just adding on all this extra stuff. You're adding on all these extra stories. The way she stared down the jury, it was just so weird. Like, you can literally see the differences between how she testified versus how Johnny testified. Like, when he testified, he was just telling a story. He was thinking, he was like, yeah, this happened, XYZ happened, no, yes, no. When she testified, it was like she was just on a mission. Like, yeah, I'm going to make these jurors believe me today. She would, like, stare over at them. Even when the counsel would be on a break and they would just go up to talk to the judge, she would still stare down the jury, just, like, trying to make sure that they believed her. If I was on that jury, I probably would have had to say something like, excuse me, judge, this chick keeps staring at us. It's making me feel very uncomfortable. I probably would have got dismissed. But I wouldn't be able to take that. It's so awkward. The jury came back with a verdict in like a day or two. Like, they probably just wanted a free lunch for a couple of days or whatever. So they rewarded him on all of his counts. He got, but she won one of the counts because I believe it was involving his lawyer and some statements that he made specifically to an event. Like, I think she published some pictures and the lawyer basically said that it looked staged, which wasn't true, or may or may not have been true, but there's no way he would have known that. So the jury rewarded her on that one count. Everything else was like, you chick, you lying. So today we're going to look at a little bit of this interview that she did that goes with Dateline. So I just want to see what she had to say. It's just, I guess her lawyers doing those interviews wasn't enough. And she was like, no, you can't do it. I got to go do it myself. I got to go dig this hole deeper for myself. She couldn't take it. So let's just see what these interviews are doing.
Savannah Guthrie with Amber Heard after the verdict.
You're here. Some people might ask, why?
Yeah.
Are you brave? Are you
No.
reckless? Are you vindictive?
Look at her face.
Why did you want to do an interview?
The one thing I can tell you is,
One thing I'm going to say, even her face, while she's asking her that question, like that little, like, that smirk. We're going to get into, like, an interview I think they had with one of the jurors, and he was like, her emotions would just cut on and off. It would just, like, she would be, like, devastatedly crying 1 minute, and then 1 second later, if there was an objection, her face would just go stone cold. And then when they proceeded again, she would go back into her crying and whatever sadness mode. So they were like, she just wasn't believable.
one thing I'm not is vindictive. There's no part of me that sees any, this would be a really lousy way to get vengeance.
What do you hope to get across here?
Vengeance?
Everything said about you. What do you wish people knew?
You know, Savannah, as silly as it is to say this out loud, my goal, the only thing I can hope for at this point, is just want people to see me as a human being.
Tonight,
So how are we seeing you now? See, that's the thing with journalism. I would just ask, like, so, okay, that you don't feel like they see you as a human being. How do you feel they see you?
The next move was just a bang, and she clocked me in the jaw.
And you see how he, like, reenacts it? Like he's working from memory. He's working from what he remembered in his mind. But when she's telling her story, it's just like you can see, like, the script rolling in her head. It's just like, okay, I'm visualizing this story because I made this up last night.
Hit me over and over and over again, and
And looking at
thought,
the jury.
this is how I die.
the trial made public.
And that's another thing. If she always feared for her life, there was a point in the trial where they talked about his birthday and she gave him a gift for his birthday. She gave him a knife, an engraved knife. Now, if you feared for your life, would you give a person who could potentially expire you a knife as a gift? And then just be proud of it. Like, yeah, I got him a knife, you know? And then they asked her at one point, well, did you have any reservations on why you should give him a knife? He's like, no, why should I? You just said that he was going to kill you.
A volatile marriage with private moments caught on tape.
I was hitting you. It was not punching you. Babe, you're not punched.
For some people, they just were frankly disgusted by the whole thing and don't have much sympathy for either one of you. Can you understand that?
Absolutely.
she's like, can that register? Do you get it?
I can understand that. I would not blame the average person for looking at this and how it's been covered and not think that it is Hollywood brats at their worst. But what people don't understand is it's actually so much bigger than that. This is not only about our First Amendment right to speak.
But here's the thing about the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects free speech. It doesn't protect lies that amount to defamation. And that was the issue in the case.
Yes, exactly. Free speech does not protect you if you go into a crowded theater and you scream fire. We get the concept of free speech from the Greeks, but my understanding of what that means is not just the freedom to speak. It's a freedom to speak truth to power.
But truth is the word.
Truth to power is not just the freedom to speak. It's the freedom to speak truth to power. What? Freedom of speech is not literally the freedom to speak. It's not literally the freedom to speak like audible words. Freedom of speech includes everything in terms of expression, freedom of expression, freedom. You can write whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. That includes everything in terms of expressing yourself, not just literal speak. And truth to power. What does that even mean? How does that apply to her case?
Amber Laura Heard grew up outside Austin,
We don't
Texas.
spoil this part,
with
'cause I don't care.
got a call that would change her life. It was from superstar Johnny Depp,
Here.
who wanted her to co-star with him in a film called The Rum Diary. and it seemed like the Depp-Heard saga might end there.
What?
In 2018, she landed her biggest role yet in Aquaman. That same year, as the Me Too movement was in full swing,
And that's another thing. Her defense team at one point in the trial tried to equate her career with that of Jason Momoa, like Chris Pratt, Zendaya, all these people saying that they were comparable in terms of their careers. Like, no, chick. Like, these people have been working. I know for a fact Jason Momoa. You know what? Jason Momoa, I first saw him in a Lifetime movie called Tempted. It was like in the early 2000s. And I've been on the Jason Momoa train ever since day one. Okay. So he has been a working actor for at least 2 decades. You know, it's just, I think the delusion sort of transferred over to her defense team at that point, because they were saying, oh, she's comparable. She's a comparable actress to all these people that have been in Hollywood and headlined their own movies and basically had long-term contracts with you know, DC and Marvel on this stuff. No, they're not comparable. But somehow she convinced them that they were.
she wrote this now infamous op-ed for the Washington Post. It included a key line: I became a public figure representing domestic abuse.
You said many times you just wanted to go on with your life. When you wrote the op-ed, it raised all of this again. Why did you do that if you wanted to just go on and put this past you?
Because the op-ed wasn't about my relationship with Johnny.
But it alluded to him. It was unmistakable.
You know, what the op-ed was about was, you know, me loaning my voice to a bigger cultural conversation that we were having at the time. It was about reforms, legislative reforms, renewing the Violence Against Women Act.
Did you worry? Gosh.
She literally on the stand said she wrote the op-ed about Johnny because he was a powerful man. She literally admitted that on the stand. So this is just like blatantly like dishonest. Is dishonest. It's just, you can't say that you can't say you were just lending your voice to being some sort of like helping hand to a cause that was happening, because nobody was trying to push for that cause specifically at that moment. When you wrote that op-ed, it was just like, what are you doing? The only thing she did was try to add some juice to her divorce settlement.
Having been found liable, are you nervous as we are here today about what you can say now?
No. Of course.
No, she's not.
I took for granted what I assumed was my right to speak. Not just about what I lived through, but what I knew.
Do you feel like...
Oh, listening to her talk is so exhausting. It's like every point is so forced. It's not natural. You're just trying to just drive home some epic point with every word. I've always been kind of turned off by people who smile to the side, like, that side smile. It's like, why can't it just be equal? Like, what? It's like, is it just half of you was happy or sad? Like,
Violence.
The Depp team argued that you were the user, that you instigated physical violence.
I never had to instigate it. I responded to it.
Amber's lawyers had fought to keep TV cameras.
oh, this is going to take so long. Let me speed this up. I need to speed this up because this is just doing too much. It's doing too much. Let's do
out,
yeah,
but
that's
lost.
much better.
I didn't want this to be a thing. As I testified to, if it meant the difference between a broken nose or a sore cheek, I would do it.
What about the witnesses who said they have seen you instigate physical violence? Did they all come in and lie in court?
I'm, less interested in sitting here.
Oh, shout out to Savannah Guthrie. Like, she's really, she knows how to follow up and be like, what about, did everybody lie? So everybody felt like lying against you.
Relitigating it with you. I am not here to call any of his witnesses any names. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to just kind of talk about it from what it felt like for me as a person who sat there.
Exactly. She's not here to answer any questions that would hold her feet to the fire. She's not there to answer any questions that would make her accountable. She's just there to answer questions about how she felt about everything and have like a guilt trip interview. She's not there to answer any questions that make sense. She just wants to have a pity party on camera. That's it.
There was one more voice Depp's legal team wanted the jury to hear, Amber's. They had audio recordings of the couple talking about how Amber sometimes got physical.
I want to smack my ear again. So resounds in my cranium. You like that?
I love you.
Oh.
I love you. I'm sorry.
In another recording, Amber was less apologetic.
I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not deck you. I was hitting you.
There are tapes in which you acknowledge hitting. There are tapes in which you say, I started the fight.
I know much has been made of these audio tapes. And as I testified on the stand, what you would hear in those clips are not evidence of what was happening. It was evidence of a negotiation of how to talk about that with your abuser.
But I am looking at a transcript that says, he says, you start physical fights, and you say, I did start a physical fight.
I did start a physical fight.
You did.
But you're just telling me today, I never started a physical fight, and here you are on tape saying you did.
As I testified on the stand about this, is that when your life is at risk, not only will you take the blame for things that you shouldn't take the blame for, but when you're in an abusive dynamic, psychologically, emotionally.
But these are things that happen after. These are things that happen under oath on the stand. Her question was, you under oath said you never started a physical fight, and they played the tapes to prove that you admitted that you did, and now you're sitting here saying you didn't do it again. And she's going back to when you're in that situation, you try to negotiate. Girl, bye.
And physically, you don't have the luxury of saying, hey, this is black and white, because it's anything but when you're living in it.
He says he never hit you. Never. Is that a lie?
Yes, it is.
He says he's never struck any woman. His lawyers argued at trial. None of his other prior relationships, not one woman has come forward and said he physically hit them. You were the only one.
Look what happened to me when I came forward. Would you?
What happened?
Coming up.
I felt so embarrassed that he
What
could kick me
happened
to
to
the ground.
her? I think it's funny how she's always referencing her quote unquote testimony as opposed to what actually happened. When you're recalling memories, you're like, yeah, this actually happened to me. This is what happened. This is what I had to deal with. You don't just go to the testimony and just refer to that. She's always saying, I stand by my testimony. I stand by what I said on the stand, not I stand by the fact that this actually happened to me in my life. Like, this really happened to me. It's a difference there. It's sort of like a disconnect because she's referring, I think all of her energy was put towards making herself believable on the stand, as opposed to trying to convince people that this was the truth. Because if you actually live that truth, you wouldn't have to try to convince people. Does that make any sense?
Clearly, I was having a bad time. Yes, I did assault a couple of cabinets, but I did not touch Miss Heard.
You poured yourself a mega pint of red wine, correct?
A mega pint.
Yeah.
I poured myself a large glass of wine.
And remember what Depp said about that fight?
Oh, so that's where I came, because I kept thinking mega pint. And I'm like, where did all this come from? Mega pint. Okay, so that's where it came from. Oh,
In Australia, when his finger was severed, Amber denied hurting him and said on that trip she was the real victim. Amber went on to describe a harrowing incident of sexual abuse. She testified that Depp assaulted her with a bottle.
But I could just feel this pressure. And I remember that it's just not wanting to move. Because I didn't know if the bottle that he had in me was broken.
In that courtroom, I am testifying about assault and domestic violence next to a jury in front of a whole packed courtroom of people who are expressing their vocal support and disdain for me.
Amber had told her story.
Sitting here today.
Now she would be forced to defend.
I don't know how that must have been for Johnny Depp sitting there. If they are like 100% lies, just to have to sit there and listen to that just being made up on the stand and have to go through a whole week of listening to all of that. That must have been just unbelievably difficult to even deal with. The whole thing with the assault, like they had someone testify, I think it was one of her acting coaches, that she has trouble producing tears when she's acting, and the whole time she was on the stand, quote unquote, crying, not one tear fell. So that should tell you something.
After describing the she says she suffered at the hands of Johnny Depp, Amber Heard then faced his attorney, Camille Vasquez.
Deterred and things like that.
Vasquez set out to convince jurors they couldn't trust a word that came out of Amber's mouth.
You got physical with Mr. Depp often during your relationship, didn't you?
I had to defend myself as best I could.
You just couldn't control yourself, could you, Miss Heard? Who was the real monster in this relationship, Miss Heard?
Depp's team argued that Amber had a history of being untruthful. Case in point.
$7 million in total was donated to, I split it between the ACLU and Children's Hospital of Los Angeles.
They played a clip from an interview on Dutch TV where she said she had donated her $7 million divorce settlement to charity. But it was revealed at trial that you haven't done so yet. Do you think that raised questions as to your credibility with the jury?
Well, I think, look, when you say to someone, I bought a house, are you lying? Because you have not paid for it in full at that point? I made a pledge, and that pledge is made over time.
That analogy is stupid because, first of all, when you buy a house, you do buy it outright. You get a mortgage from a bank. You pay for the house outright, but you have to keep paying the bank the mortgage payments. So yes, when you purchase a house, you do purchase it from the owner or whoever owns the house outright, and you just pay the mortgage to the bank. Okay, so that analogy is not applicable. When you say you donated money as opposed to pledging, that means you donated the full amount, and pledging is just saying you're going to do it in the future. It's not the same thing. When she was asking her, did she know the difference between pledging and donating? And she said, yes, I use them synonymously. That just doesn't make any sense. It's like saying, did you pay for this? Or are you saying you're going to pay for it? It's two different things. You can't say it's the same thing.
Nature. You're splitting hairs a little bit there, because when you say I donated, you know that everybody thinks that you've donated it, not that you pledged it. So for the jurors sitting there, do you think they felt like that was you getting caught in a lie?
I don't know, because I feel like so much of the trial was meant to cast aspersions on who I am as a human, my credibility, to call me a liar in every way.
See, there's that smirk again.
It was a credibility.
There's that smirk again.
Depp's team also painted Amber as an attention seeker, saying,
and that's one thing that the jurors said really stood out to them was that whole debacle with the pledging versus donating. They said that really discredited her case. Like, they're saying, if you can lie about donating money, you can lie about
she wrote that
anything.
2018 op-ed to coincide with the release of Aquaman.
And they suggested this was a publicity stunt, a way to raise your profile at a time when these issues were quite relevant.
It was one of those few moments of levity in the trial when I heard it suggested that my op-ed in the Washington Post could potentially boost sales for an international multi-million-dollar superhero franchise movie that I was starring in. It's the other way around. If anything,
thanks to you.
They're trying to get more awareness and attention on the issues within the article.
It wasn't a publicity stunt or a way to...
It's the opposite,
Depp's lawyers called witnesses to challenge Amber's story. One of Depp's friends testified about that fight on a plane when Amber says he kicked her.
And it's your testimony that Mr. Depp didn't kick Amber?
I didn't see anything like that.
And to counter the photographic evidence of Amber's injuries, Depp's lawyers showed the jury a slew of pictures of the actress looking unblemished after the alleged abuse.
Your nose doesn't appear to be injured in any of these pictures, does it, Miss Heard?
That's why I'm wearing makeup.
Amber testified that some of the photos Depp's lawyers brought to court were taken days, even weeks after the alleged injuries occurred.
What I learned in that trial is it's never going to be good enough. If you have proof, then it was a scheme. It was a hoax. If you don't have proof, it didn't happen. If you have a bruise, it's fake. If you don't have a bruise, then violence clearly didn't hurt you.
The bruises she was talking about. Now, mind you, this isn't just like some bruise where you bang into something and it bruises on your skin. She was talking about him pounding on her face all night with rings on his finger, to the point where she just lost memory and all this stuff. That would show up even if you have makeup on, because there will be a huge amount of swelling involved. Makeup is not going to cover up swelling. Makeup is not going to cover up gashes. Your face isn't going to look like that if you sustain the injuries that you said you sustained that night, the next day. That's just not going to happen. And that's just logic. She expected everyone to just have their logic suspended for her entire testimony. And that's just, no.
And this text message she says she sent to her father after that disputed incident on the plane. She wrote, "He kicked me in front of everyone."
I testified I was attacked on that flight, and I was attacked in front of people. And when I got off the plane, sent messages to people about what had happened. I'm angry because this happened. Can you believe he did this and this and this, And one of the people I reached out to was my father.
Depp's lawyers say the judge's rulings were fair, and a Depp spokesperson told us it's unfortunate that the defendant and her team are back to repeating, reimagining, and relitigating matters.
Because if he did this to you on the plane, there would be witnesses that you can bring in to testify. It wouldn't just be some text messages that you decided to send when you got off the plane. There would be flight attendants. There would be other people on the plane. There would be people that you could call in to testify to corroborate the story. Obviously, they didn't have it. That's why the text messages weren't allowed, because they couldn't be corroborated.
I'm not a saint. I'm not asking anyone to like me. But when I testified, I asked the jury to just see me as human and hear
This
his
is
own words,
rehearsed.
which is a promise to do this, a promise to humiliate me, a promise to ruin me. It feels as though he has.
She takes on that certain. It's that tone. It's like a rehearsed kind of, I'm the victim. Please pay attention to me.
As the trial unfolded inside that Virginia courtroom, Amber Heard and Johnny Depp were being judged in the court of public opinion.
This Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing has been going on for a little bit now, and it's gotten pretty wild.
Though both stars had their supporters on social media, there is no question that the internet sided against Amber Heard.
Ew, this is so cringe. Guilty.
I mean, this was a sort of medieval orgy of hatred.
Michelle Goldberg is an opinion columnist for the New York Times.
I think it was, people really enjoyed joining in. That's, often the case with mob behavior. And I think that's essentially what this was. It was kind of, misogynist mob behavior.
Online, people picked apart Amber's every move.
Misogynist? It's not. That's the thing. Like, I know of Johnny Depp. I'm not a super duper crazy fan. I never even heard of Amber Heard. I had no idea that she was even the person in Aquaman. I saw Aquaman. I didn't even know who she was. I did not feel like I did it just because of celebrity. Like, once people heard the testimony and saw what was going on, you can't just say because it's a social media mob that people just wanted to jump in and attack her. It's because they saw an injustice happening. It's because they saw that nothing was making sense. And I think, well, this is just what I've heard, that he intentionally went to that state, Virginia, to have this trial because he knew that they would air it. The team wanted it, the whole story out there, because if you listen to media, because of the whole Me Too, they automatically jumped on Amber Heard's side. And, when you actually heard all of the testimony and all of everything that was going on, there's no way you can believe it. So I think it was just people being logical and people seeing it for themselves. And a lot of outlets and media have problems with the fact that people sort of made up their own minds about it instead of being told what to believe.
Videos ridiculed her facial expressions and accused her of faking emotion on the stand.
This is just a fake crying train wreck you can't look away from.
I think a majority of this trial was played out outside of a courtroom, unfortunately. I think vast majority of this trial was played out on social media. And I think that this trial is an example of that gone haywire, gone amok. And the jury is not immune to that.
You think the jury saw it?
How could they not? I think even the most well-intentioned juror, it would have been impossible to avoid this.
Depp's attorneys reject the notion that social media influenced the jury in any way. They say they believe jurors followed the judge's instructions to not read about the case. They said social media wasn't the problem, Amber was. The Depp lawyer called your testimony the performance of a lifetime, and said you were acting. What do you say to that?
Says the lawyer for the man who convinced the world he had scissors for fingers. I'm the performer.
What? Wait.
For the man who convinced the world he had scissors for fingers. I'm the performer.
Wait. So she said the man who convinced the world he has scissors for fingers. Wait. So she thinks we really think that he has scissors, that he's ever scissor hands? She really think that we think he went around chopping up trees and doing horticulture for people's lawns and stuff? That's what she think? She think that we think he has scissors for fingers? And why that reference? Girl, it's just. But mind you, I was kind of let down by, like, they kept mentioning 21 Jump Street and Jack Sparrow. I said Edward Scissorhands is a classic too. That is a holiday staple. That didn't get enough love during this trial. I wish they would have mentioned Edward Scissorhands more.
Insinuating that, or saying quite directly that, I'm a terrible actress. So I'm a bit confused how I could be both.
Yo, you were terrible on the stand too. Don't get it twisted.
What might the impact be?
You come into the courtroom. Were you feeling confident?
No. Because the answer is no.
That's a great
she can't
question.
Admit it. Yeah, she
I wish I
can't
could say
admit
yes
no.
to that. I want to say yes to you, but it wouldn't be true.
I want to say yes to you, but it wouldn't be true. So just say no. That's the thing about, and I can't really diagnose anybody, but narcissism is real in this world. And the one thing that is a staple of narcissism is they cannot admit when they're wrong. They can't. They will circumvent it. That's probably the closest you'll ever get to a narcissist admitting something that they just don't want to admit to. Just saying, oh, I wish I could tell you this, but I just can't say it. They will never say, I'm sorry. They will never say that they're wrong because it just is too much of a hit to the ego. And with a question like that, someone in this position, they would easily say, yeah, no, I wasn't confident. It was a tumultuous situation. I didn't know what to expect, something like that. But to say, I wish I could say yes. She knows the trial was a train wreck. She just can't say it.
About Mr. Depp. Answer, yes. Court is adjourned. Thank you.
In the end, the jury believed Johnny Depp, awarding him more than $10 million in damages. Amber won a single defamation claim in her countersuit and was awarded $2 million.
There's no polite way to say it. The jury looked at the evidence you presented. They listened to your testimony, and they did not believe you. They thought you were lying.
I'll put it this way. How could they make a judgment? How could they not come to that conclusion? They had sat in those seats and heard over 3 weeks of nonstop, relentless testimony from paid employees.
I don't know if it was,
and towards the end of the trial,
nonstop and relentless testimony. It was relentless, and I'm sure they couldn't wait to get out of there.
I don't blame them. I actually understand. He's a beloved character, and people feel they know him. He's a fantastic actor.
Their job is to not be dazzled by that.
Again, how could they, after listening to 3.5 weeks of testimony about how I was a non-credible person, not to believe a word that came out of my mouth?
Nothing
I'm a hysterical
did that
woman,
more than
a
her
crazy
own
woman.
testimony. Nothing proved to them more how not unbelievable she is than her own testimony. That's what did it. That is what brought it over the top for them, is her own testimony, herself. It wasn't paid people. It wasn't the fact that he was a celebrity. Most of the people that even got into this trial knew of him, but like they weren't super fans like me. Like I wasn't like a super duper fan. I mean, I knew of him, but it's like if you have an interest in law and you have an interest in just how the media sort of spins certain things, this covered all facets of that. Also with the whole women's issues, because it's like actual victims are saying, do not lump us into this because it doesn't go down this way. This is just not relatable to them either. So it covered all facets of things. So it's not just about the celebrity or about, people being subjected to manipulation by paid people to go on and stand. It was just people can see when someone's just not being truthful. It's just instinctual. It's part of human nature. You instinctually can tell when something's off, and there's a whole bunch of stuff off with this case.
Johnny Depp was quick to celebrate his victory in a statement that read in part, "From the very beginning, the goal of bringing this case was to reveal the truth, regardless of the outcome," adding, "The jury gave me my life back. I am truly humbled."
When I asked his lawyers, why do you think you won? The answer I got was, because she never took responsibility for anything she did in the marriage. And as we're sitting here and I watched her cross-examination, there's an answer for everything. Do you feel you should have owned up to more of your own bad behavior that was revealed in court?
I'm glad, actually, you asked me that because, there is an answer for these things you say. I said this on the stand. You hear my voice in those audio tapes. It's not the voice of me now. That's not who I am now. I did do and say horrible, regrettable things throughout my relationship. I behaved in horrible, almost unrecognizable to myself ways. I have so much regret.
On the first day of the trial, you issued a statement, and part of the statement said, "I still have love for Johnny."
Yes.
Is that still true?
Yes.
After everything?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Why?
I love him. I loved him with all my heart. And I tried the best I could to make a deeply broken relationship work. And I couldn't.
Amber Heard says she intends to appeal her case, and she's concerned her defeat may be a setback for other women.
I hope this hasn't, had the chilling effect that I worry it may have on other people. I worry about that. But if I can look you in the eye, Savannah, and say I'm still here, and maybe that serves to balance out some of the very, very real fear others may have about coming forward or speaking out. I look forward to living my life, and I have a long one, I hope, in front of me. And I will continue to walk through this with my chin up.
Oh, child. Yeah, well. Yeah, well, it is what it is. It did have an impact. It sort of brought more attention to, potential male victims. Like, maybe they can be heard more, because it's like, as I said, people, like, actual victims are saying, like, no, this is not how we want to represent ourselves. It's just no. So anyway, let me know what you think. Did you see the trial? How do you feel about this whole interview circuit, like, career salvage situation going on? I really feel bad for Aquaman and Jason Momoa. I really want to see that movie. But I know there's a petition going around with millions of signatures of people saying they're going to boycott it if she's in it. And I just feel like he's going to suffer because of the situation, and it has nothing to do with him. And that's just not fair. So yeah, let me know what you think. This is just nuts. This is nuts. But anyway, let's get the conversation going on down there in the comments. Like, subscribe, share. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. And I'll see you next time. Peace.